Okie dokie. So, welcome back, everybody, to the 7 day fast start. This is day 2. We had a great turnout on day 1, and we were supposed to record this last week, but here we are. So, we've got Alan with us, and obviously, we are your hosts. I'm Robert, and we have Alan over on the East Coast. And this is day 2, and today we're going to be talking about your market, your superpower, and disruptive idea. And as I briefly mentioned, I made a quick little live video in our Facebook group. These 3 things are, if you're launching a business or an offer, if you get these things wrong, it can really make it like swimming upstream. And if you get them right, it's really like, I don't want to say that this is the only thing that matters, but certainly can help you have that kind of a hot knife through butter type of feeling, if you're going out there to the market and you're nailing these things. So this is really about, the foundation of your entire offer. And Alan's going to be light on this, but quick recap on, not even a recap, but just to show you the roadmap. So some of you guys have seen day 1. I hope everybody. And if you didn't, we covered, the 7-figure economics, like what goes into having $1 million online business and how does that work? How many products you have to sell and what different types of products should you be selling and all that. And we pulled up the economics spreadsheet, which you guys have access to. Then we kind of covered everything about this model, which in a nutshell, you have a front end offer, usually lower ticket, gets a lot of customers in there. You go to different marketplaces or advertising networks rather, and you advertise your front end offer. You bring in a lot of customers, and then you have other things to sell those people, whether it's high ticket back end or recurring programs and whatnot. And that allows you to fully automate your front end acquisition, your customer acquisition, get a lot of people in. And then you have also a process for turning a profit from those, because one thing we covered was a lot of people make the mistake of trying to be profitable on their acquisition offer, on the first thing that they sell. And that can be very difficult. And as soon as you just take the acquisition offer and dump the money back into advertising to get more customers, all of a sudden you start to find that as long as you have something else to sell them, you can be a lot more competitive and you can actually run ads to get clients. And, this is something that a lot of people mess up. Like I have a friend who's been doing this for a while and he keeps coming to me with his business and he's like, I want to run ads to this. But I'm like, look, you can get the best advertiser in the world and he's not going to be able to fix this unless you fix your economics. Like he only has one service to sell. And if he takes that to the marketplace, his cost to deliver that service is already 50%. So then if he's going to spend money acquiring customers too, then there's going to be no margin left. And so the only way that would work is if he had more things to sell to those people to turn a profit. So yeah. And this is day 2. We're going to be talking about, like I said, the picking a profitable market, figuring out the superpower of you or the person that you are publishing. And then we're going to be talking about a disruptive idea, which is going to help you kind of cut through all the noise out there in the marketplace. And we have this little trifecta here, the market, the superpower, and the disruptive idea. And let's start off kind of going into what a market is and kind of how to pick one and things like that. So I like to think of what is a market as far in terms of it's a group of people with a common problem that they don't necessarily have the solution to yet, or they have an inefficient solution. So, Alan, we have a couple of more things obviously to say about this. So can you maybe bring us your thoughts about what is a market? Because a lot of people, they hear, maybe niche is like another word for it, but it's kind of one of those words and people don't maybe sometimes even think about what it is and so on.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So I guess to me, it's like a market is just a group of people where value is exchanged, right? And so where there's inefficient solutions, right? So the solution isn't quite solved permanently. So if a solution is
Right.
presented permanently to the market, what ends up happening is that the market ceases to exist, right? Because, for example, like, in the 1950s, there was a market for polio, right? Polio cures, et cetera, right? And then they had the vaccine, they cured polio, and the market no longer exists, right? Because that vaccine cured polio, right? And so one other thing about, market is just an exchange of value, right? And the biggest thing, like when you read a lot of these business books and watch business videos, like the word value gets tossed up, in the air a lot. It's like, value, 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 but it's such an abstract, vague word. It's like, what's it really mean, right? So the best definition of value is something that's very useful, right? And so if you have a market, basically people have a problem, and like what you're offering in terms of value is something that's very useful to that person, right? So for example, if somebody, is walking somewhere, it'd be very useful for them to have a car. If somebody has to go to the library to do research, it's very useful to have a computer and get on Google to do research. So value is basically just determined of what's very useful, and a market is just where the value exchanges place, right? And so like the value that you get in exchange for giving value is money, right? And basically just an exchange of value that takes place in a market to solve a problem that a large group of people have.
Yeah. And then you've kind of, when we've discussed this, there's this kind of differentiation, and I think we're actually going to go into this a little bit later. So maybe you can just give us a teaser, so to speak, about this idea of there's like biological and psychological needs and wants in markets.
Mm. Yeah. So markets are biological, right? So for example, like food, you need biological, you need to eat something, right? And they're psychological. Basically, it's like wants versus needs, right? So needs are typically like biological. I need to have this, right, in order to, satisfy my biology. And then psychological is like I want, to satisfy my psychology, right? And so typically luxury goods are, psychological needs, and everything, and like a lot of, lower end goods are biological needs, right? And so those are interlinked. So for example, a lot of you guys here, have a psychological need to want to learn how to build a business, build an offer. And so that's why you're here. And then, but that's also linked to your, biology, because biologically speaking, it's like, well, if I fix this, then, I can eat better, I can get better healthcare, I can do all this. So it's all connected, right? But ultimately, it's like if it's a biological market, it's a really good market because that's a pure need, not a want. And if you have
Right.
a pure need, a lot easier to sell than a pure want,
Yeah, and it's kind of like, water and electricity in your house. Nobody has to throw up ads on Facebook to convince you to buy them. You just need them, Yeah. So that's like a good starting point for what a market is. And one way that we kind of like to break it down too is each market has a problem, and then there's the solution. So there's always two parts to each market. And a lot of times I find that people start, they want to start a business, right? And so they start with the thing that they want to sell, and then they start looking for people to buy it. But oftentimes it's almost better, these people that are walking around with the desire to start a business, but they don't have an idea, that's almost better, because that would naturally lead you to start off with the marketplace first. So you kind of figure out what is a group of people who's got a problem, and what is that problem, and then how can I solve it? I think that's a much better way, typically, unless you're going into something that's already been proven by other people or other businesses. But oftentimes people have this thing that they want to sell, and then they start looking for buyers, but it's like the thing originated from them. It didn't originate from the market. And the market is they're going to decide everything. They're going to decide what they want to buy. They're going to decide how much they want to pay. We think we have, control over this, and arguably some companies do, with tremendous financial resources where they have to sort of change behavior and all these things. But typically the market is the one who's in charge, So yeah, we talked about problems and solutions, and biological needs and psychological needs, which we're going to cover more a bit on the next slides. Also, I think this is kind of going into I don't know, copywriting territory in some sense, but it's very important. So you've talked about this, Alan, this idea of cure versus prevention. Can you talk about this concept and why one of them is a lot more powerful than the other one?
Yeah. So when it comes to markets, you have two type of things, like segments. It's like you have the cure and you have a prevention. Like prevention basically solves a problem that's going to happen in the future, right? And the problem is that in itself is that humans aren't really good at solving future-based problems, right? We're kind of like better at future gain, like if I do this, then I'm going to get that. So for example, if I invest in this business, I'm going to get rich and I can do all these positive things, right? But we're really bad at like preventing like bad things to happen in the future, because the thing is, like, we're wired for a fear now, right? Like fear now mechanism. And so if you're saying, if you do this, you're going to prevent X happening. Well, I don't have that problem right now, right? So for example, if somebody's smoking, right? Or like, for example, I have a buddy, he has a quit drinking offer, does like, a few million a year. And so he, the problem there is, for example, like if you keep drinking, then it's like, in the future, you're going to have all these problems and the liver is going to fall apart. you can lose your family and job and everything, right? But it doesn't register to these people, right? And so it's like, whereas like if somebody, for example, does drink and they hit rock bottom, and they lose their job and they're like, I really got to stop this. That's a right now problem, right? And so basically that's a cure. And so he sells to those people. So whenever you have a market you want to sell to, like a cure is a lot easier to sell than prevention. Like people don't really want to buy prevention. It's really hard, right? So like anything like, so for example, with biological markets, like weight loss and health offers, whatever, you don't see many people running offers out there saying, like, stop, change your diet, whatever, and prevent becoming a diabetic, whatever. It doesn't happen, right? Or like, prevent, change your diet or
Right.
do this, prevent this bad thing from happening. What ends up happening is those people tend to sell to people that already have that problem. Like, oh, you're a diabetic now, and you have these issues. Here's how to control your blood sugar, right? So they're offering a cure, not in the sense of like a medical cure, right? Because you can't sell that. That's kind of like a red zone territory. You should never like offer like sell medical cures, but in sense of a cure for the problem that they're experiencing right now, and they can take many shapes. For example, like if you have a dog training offer, it's not like here, do these things so your dog doesn't go crazy and like a year from now, right? Well, it's like, well, no, your dog's going crazy now. Here's the cure to having the dog to behave. So that's
Yeah,
kind
and
of
it's
the
like
thing.
going to the dentist for your annual checkup, and it's like a lot of us kind of skip that. We're like, oh, I'll be fine, and then one day you wake up and your tooth just hurts like crazy, and you don't need a whole lot of convincing, to go to the dentist. Like I'm looking for the cure right now, like solve my problem, and like Alan was saying, we're very bad of, I think, amplifying that pain in the future and actually doing what we're supposed to. And how many of us have had some kind of health problem where it's not super painful or whatever, but it is in fact a problem and it does need fixing, and we're prescribed some kind of supplement or whatever the case may be, and we just don't do it. Like we just don't follow the directions. And I've heard also with a lot of people that have surgeries, after they come out, like a lot of people just kind of don't do the rehab, the physical rehabilitation. So I think we're just bad at doing those things, and putting the importance on prevention. It's like we just don't really care that much, or I don't know what it is, but that's just the way we're wired, right?
Yeah, one other thing is the magnitude of the market and like how much money can be made in the market is directly correlated to these things, right? So for example, like the weight loss market is one of the biggest verticals out there. Um, and the reason it's one of the biggest verticals out there is because it's an unsolvable biological need, right? Like the people in that market, their own biology is going against them. Like they want to lose weight, but then they have all these like hormones like insulin, leptin, ghrelin, etc. Affecting their ability to lose weight, right? And so they have a biological need, right? And they have a real problem which they need a cure for, right? Like a cure for weight loss. How do I lose this weight? And so because of that, that's why you see so many products and offers in the weight loss market. So when you think about weight loss, you're mostly thinking like, oh, it's like supplements, weight loss pills. So it's not the case. Like a weight loss market is like treadmills, bikes, gyms, workout videos, like YouTube content site about like dieting, losing weight, etc. Like all this stuff. It's like a massive market, right? And so a market also can fragment itself into various value provisions, right? And so that's basically the best example of biological market, and that's why there's so much money in the weight loss market. And there's a bunch of different markets like this um, that are always there.
Anti-aging, you've said, is another really good example, right? Where it's like you can't really solve that problem, but people want the problem solved, which makes it a really good market.
Well, you can't solve the problem permanently, but it's like you can like if you focus on like extending telomeres and stuff like that with biology and stuff, there's some scientific evidence that shows you can slow down aging. But yeah, exactly. I mean, people get people age, people get older, etc. Wrinkles show up, etc. And so like as they get older, that market is really good. Typically, biological markets tend to kind of correlate with the um, you know timeline of life, right? And so the older people get, the more health things happen, right? And so like when people, after you turn like 35, things start to fall apart, right? So
Right.
weight gain, vision, gray
I'm
hair.
34, so I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. So like things happen, right? And so, the older people get, the more biological issues they have, right? And the
Yep.
corollary, what also happens is that they tend to make a lot more money, right? So somebody that's 40 years old tends to make a lot more money than somebody that's 20 years old. Now, a 20-year-old doesn't really have many biological health issues. Most of them don't, right? And so they're fine.
Mhm.
And so, but they don't also make a lot of money, right? So they don't have a lot of discretionary income. And so, like, if you're selling to like health markets, it's better. So I have a buddy doing like he's selling like 400 books a day, in the anti-aging space, like how to live to be like 100 years old or something. So and it's really cool. And the one thing I realized is like the older the demographic gets, the more money they have, just because on the factor of spending X amount of years in a career or whatever.
Yeah.
And that has a huge effect on it, because if your market doesn't have a lot of money to spend, then it's like it'll be really hard for you. It doesn't matter how good you are at your offer, the marketing, whatever.
Right.
If they don't have the money, there isn't much you can do to get something that doesn't exist. And so
Yeah,
yeah.
I still remember when I first started out with my online business, there was a guy who was also starting out, and I remember that he was trying to figure out which market to sell to. And I'll never forget because I think it's a great example to kind of illustrate the point you just mentioned, which is that some people just don't have money, right? And that's not typically a good market. He said, I want to sell websites to struggling comedians.
Mm.
I'm like, ooh, I don't know how much money you're going to get out of that market.
Yeah.
So yeah, and you've been doing this for a long time. What are some markets that tend to do really well that are sort of ripe for making money online specifically? I think that's why a lot of us are here, right?
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing with people that want to make money online is they want to go find like they have two problems, right? One, they want to have a unique idea, because they think that uniqueness of idea is like the solution to all the problems. It's not.
Right.
It's marketing and sales, right? So the biggest issue most people have when it comes to looking for a market, they want to have a unique idea that somehow magically it's like this thing solved. And this thing comes from like that whole Bill Gates had an idea on Microsoft, he got rich. Like Zuckerberg had an idea for Facebook and he got rich. So a lot of this in our modern folklore, I guess, with like society celebrating these super achievers, right? Like Bezos had an idea and now he's rich, right? So if I just have a unique idea, I can get rich, right? And that's fine. There's a case like that, but an idea is like not worth much, right, without execution. And so it's like the marketing and stuff like that, all the economics and everything behind the idea is what really matters, right? That's the first thing. The second problem most people make is like they want to go into a market that has no competition. It's like it's like they're the only ones to discover the market, right, etc.
Right.
And this goes back to like the idea of how most wealth was acquired, right, in history. Basically, it was like you explore and you land in some country or some land, and nobody claimed this land, and because there's nobody there, all the land is yours, right, and you just have to defend it. And that's how or like, for example, the era of gold rush, right? For example, you just find this gold mine and you can mine and you get rich. Or, let me just find this stock, that nobody has, not many people are in. So it's undervalued and it's got to get into this thing or whatever. And then it's like, I can make a lot of money, right? So there's this pattern there. But the problem with that is like with marketing and, the openness of the internet is like, if you go somewhere, and there's nobody there, there's like a chance that there's not much money to be had there, because it's
Right.
there's no barriers when the digital world. There's no barriers. You don't have to go over the ocean to find a land. You don't have to go over the mountains to find a gold mine. You're 3 clicks away to the market to find out what's there, right? And so,
And just on a fundamental level, I mean, if there's no competitors there, it's probably for a reason. There's no margin. There's no money to be made, because
Yeah.
a lot of times, people find a gold mine. Well, guess what? Other people find out about it and they all flock to it until it's no longer a gold mine,
Yeah, exactly. So like for me personally, I like to go into the markets that have a lot of competition, or like semi a lot of competition, because other
Right.
people have like people prove the ads, people tested the ads, people have proved the products, people tested funnels, people tested backends. Like they figured a lot of stuff out, right? So I just got to go in and see what they're doing, and I know how to do better, and I do it better, right? And so that's the biggest thing as far as that goes. Now, like the other thing is also to look at, as far as market goes, is to look at like parallels that are happening, right? So for example, like if you want to go to a market, there are a lot of books being sold on Amazon. If people are buying a lot of books on Amazon on the topic, and there's no book offers, chances are that book offer will do very well, even though there's not, even though it doesn't look good from the surface level. So when I say go into a market, I'm not saying go on Facebook and see if anybody's running ads or not. I'm not saying go on Google or YouTube and see if anybody's running ads or not, or anybody has a direct response style offer like we teach. What I'm saying is like go look in a market like as a whole, like our retailers, local, like Walmart, Target, whatever you have in your country, are they selling it? Are the bookstores selling it? Are their YouTube channels for free? Because that's a market. Even though somebody's creating free content, they're getting paid by YouTube ad dollars, right? That's a market. So look at all these things and see what's going on, and so like you want to go where money's already being, money exchanges hands, and so you can get some of that exchange for yourself with your value contribution to the market. You don't want to be you don't want to, you want to stay away from two things. One, the uniqueness of idea, and two, you want to stay away from, trying to find this little, cave that's full of gold that nobody else found, and that you're gonna get
Right.
rich. I'm not saying you can't do it. You can do it, right? But given
It's just
enough, like
hard.
yeah, it's gonna take you, a very long time, and you're working against probabilities, right? So it's like it might take you a year, it might take you 5 years, it might take you 10 years, it might take you forever. And then the problem with having a uniqueness ideas is that you lead the market with arrows in your back, meaning that even if you do have a cool unique idea and you were the first to go do it, well, guess what? Everybody's gonna copy you in like 3 months, 6 months, a year, right? And so like we're running this book offer, and a lot of very famous gurus are now like copying us. And so it's like leaders in that sense lead with arrows in their backs, right? They show up and then everybody else shoots them, they fall down, they copy the model, and basically you're fighting with savages across the board. And so you want to avoid that. So the best thing to do is like go into market where money's already exchanging hands, because that market is established, and you want to kind of go navigate that market using better marketing and such.
Yep. All right. Well, let's move on to the next slide. This we kind of touched on this a little bit, but we pulled up the old Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and one interesting point about this, I don't know if you want to perhaps elaborate on it, Alan, but when you have a low income, your money is going to be spent on physiological needs: food, water, and shelter, and then security and safety next. And then as your income rises, anti-aging creams might become more appealing, or a Louis Vuitton bag might become more appealing, and so on. And when I was 24, when I graduated college and I got a pretty good corporate job, right, as working in an insurance company. But I just wanted more out of life, right? That's all I knew. I didn't know what I was going to do. All I knew was that I wanted more out of life. So I had this job. I was 24. It was a pretty good job. It was better than a lot of what my friends had. My parents were pretty happy. They could brag to their friends that, hey, my son graduated from college and he's got a pretty good job. And I just kind of internally hated it. And I stayed for, I don't know, a bit less than a year, and then just decided that enough is enough. And I quit my job. And I told my parents, like, after I quit my job. And my mom was, she's from Eastern Europe. She came from a low income, very much food, water, and shelter kind of a need. So for her, it was very difficult to comprehend how somebody could do something like that, because this is the lens that she was looking through. But, luckily I had a pretty good childhood, and I had, food in my mouth, and I had a roof over my head, and I had my education. And I was like, I could probably do better. I could probably not only have these things, but I could actually do something that I enjoy. I could actually maybe build my own business and have the freedom to not ask somebody if I want to take time off, or whatever the case may be. So these things that we do, they change based on income. So yeah, Alan, I don't know if you want to add anything to that, but I think it's a very good thing to note before you dive into a market. You should understand like who's in there and what are their needs,
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, this is really, really important. It's really important because like the thing is like people don't have any consideration on this, right? So they want to sell like as if this doesn't exist. The problem is, the great wall of Facebook, Google, and YouTube exist, and in order to get over that wall to get your customers, you have to pay them, right? And so
Yep.
if you're targeting people with physiological needs who only, look for food, water, and shelter, and basically, and you got to go pay Facebook, say 20, $30 to sell a book. Well, guess what? They're not going to have that money to pay you in order to cover your cost, right? And so you have to be really aware of this, as far as where it goes, And so that the interesting thing, because this is a pyramid, is because, lower income, of course, is going to be the biggest segment. You'll have most of the population. Like I think according to the U.S. Census Bureau, I think it's like 50% of people are there, right? Like in its physiological safety needs. And then it gets smaller and smaller and smaller, right? So it's like on one hand, you want to have like a big market where you have a whole lot of people, but the other hand, you want to, you want them to have a good income so they can buy your goods and services that you sell. And so this is really important. So I'll go over a few things, example of market. So for example, safety needs, for example. So we're not going to sell to physiological needs at all, because that's kind of like, there's
That would be
no,
like the gas and the utility stuff, right? Like the
yeah,
water.
yeah,
Like none of us are doing stuff like that.
yeah, basic, yeah. So safety needs, for example, would be survival markets. So if you guys see these offers out there running, like, get a credit card knife, or, a backpack, whatever, to survive in case of something bad happens. That's basically safety needs. Belongings and needs and love needs, that's basically like the relationship market, like relationship advice, dating, etc. Esteem needs would be like content creator, like something that has an expression of their, expression for them, And self-actualization would be like, for example, self-help, like something like Tony Robbins market, etc. So people that are out there, trying to like, get by every day, they're not going to be thinking about, I need self-help, etc. I mean, some might, actually that the ironic thing is that's what they need, but that's not what they respond to, right? And so you got to really tailor your market as far as like who you want to sell to, because who is a lot more important than what, because who is the, the people that give you money for the what, and most people, what they do is they approach a market with the what. It's like, I have this thing to sell and I got to go find people that want to buy it. It's a really bad recipe for disaster. And that's why a lot of people out there, when they start an online business, they always come up with the what first, and they don't think about the who, and they try to go bolt on the who, like who's going to buy this, who's going to buy this. I have this great idea, I like it, therefore other people should like it, and it never really works out.
Unless there's a bunch of luck involved. But like we said in day one, this is supposed to be the thing that removes the luck factor. So if you kind of follow what we say here, you don't have to rely on that stuff.
Yeah. There's always luck involved on some level, like we're all
Right.
lucky. I mean, we're lucky Facebook exists. We're lucky Zoom exists so we can get on this call. We're lucky to be alive at this, point in time. We're all, but you want to remove as much as luck as you can, because luck is something that you have zero control over, and you can't manufacture or you can't control, right? And so we don't work with luck, we work with probabilities, and so we just mathematical probabilities to increase our odds.
Yeah. And I don't know if you guys can tell this, but what we're kind of teaching you here are the pillars of understanding, what a market is and kind of what makes a good market and so on. We don't necessarily want to just give you a list and like, hey, pick something from the list. We're trying to teach you how this works so that you can leave here and teach this to your friends, or understand it on a level where you don't need the list. You can just sit and think and research and come up with something on your own. So another thing that we want to touch on here, because I remember starting out and like all these distinctions there are layers to anything in life. And so with this too, it was like there are so many distinctions here that I treated everything the same. I thought that a B2B market was the same as a B2C market in all the ways possible. I thought that they would buy the same products at the same price, on the same social platforms and whatnot. And so that's just not the case. So this is another one of those pillars that you need to understand. So there are B2B markets, business to business, and then there are B2C markets, business to consumer. And, we could break those down a little bit more. So, Alan, why don't you kind of share the differences, I guess, between the two markets, and we got to cover, this repair versus replace concept and stuff like that, and working on the business in the business and whatnot.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so there's two elements to it right out there. Like there's B2B, B2C, right? So B2B is business to business, B2C is business to consumer, right? And so that makes a big difference, because typically with B2B, you're dealing with you're part of the supply chain network of the business ecosystem, right? And so like for a lot of people out there running digital agencies, they're part of the supply chain network, managing ads, managing whatever, like infrastructure providers, right? Or like knowledge workers, et cetera, right? And so basically you're selling to entities, businesses, right? And so in those entities, you have individuals who control those entities, but B2B is typically this like multi-layer, multi-person thing you're selling to, right? You're trying to solve a problem, one of the problems for them. And so with B2B, there's many problems they have, right? So with the business, typically, they have operations problems, they have staffing problems, they have scaling problems, they have advertising, marketing problems, etc. And when you're selling to B2B, you're selling to one of those problems, right? You're not selling to all of them. When you're selling to B2C, business to consumer, you're typically solving one problem, right? So with B2B, they have a bunch of problems they're dealing with. You're solving to one of their problems, right? And so that's a big distinction, right? Also with B2B, because it's a company, it's an entity, you get a lot more money out of them, right? So if an average of business makes $1 million, you can get X amount from them. Whereas if you sell to B2C, with the consumer, if an average consumer makes say 30,000, 50,000 a year, you can get a lot less money from them, because of course they just don't have the money to give, right? And so I'm going to go over the B2B market first, and then we'll touch on B2C, and then we're going to continue. And so with the B2B market, what's interesting is that, this is an evolution. And so right now on the internet, right, there's two types of B2B market. There's a suit and tie and then t-shirt and hoodie segments, right? And suit and tie guys are basically like, somebody's on Facebook that owns like, I don't know, like it's a car dealership, right? He's wearing a suit and tie, and like it's a proper business, it's a proper business with everything, there, and then that's who you're dealing with, right? Whereas with the t-shirt and hoodie, B2B is like mostly you guys, right? Like basically guys in t-shirts and hoodies working from home, having an online business, much smaller businesses, and so how you talk to those people is much different, so like t-shirt, suit and tie, they want, white sheets, they want references, they want examples, etc. Where t-shirt and hoodie guys, they're more like easier to sell to, and they want possibilities. So like all you guys heard of ClickFunnels, that's basically t-shirt and hoodie market, right? And next up is like in the B2B segment, there's two types of things. I'm sure most of you guys heard of it, which is the idea of working on the business or working in the business, right? So either you work on the business or in the business. So when you're working in the business, like you're doing all the work yourself. So typically like a restaurant owner that's a chef, he's working in the business because he's in the kitchen cooking, he's helping out with everything, buying stuff, and he's doing a lot of staffing, etc. Right? That's working in the business. On the business would be like a restaurant owner that is not in the kitchen, he just owns it, he's in the back office, everybody else is the work, right? And so one of the biggest fallacies is that, selling high ticket programs and coaching is that people there's no distinction there, which limits their ability to sell, right? So people that are working in the business are typically very busy. They work like, 50, 60, 70, 80 hours a week. They work a lot, right? So if you ever heard of that, small business owner killing himself working 80 hours a week, that's where that comes from, right? And so like those people don't have the time to buy coaching. They don't have time to be coached, because to be coached, or high ticket sales, that would mean would be that they would have to go there and, learn and implement and everything. So that means they would have to go work from 80 hours to 100 hours, right? So what those typically people work in the business, what they typically do is they buy services, because what that does, it allows their workload to be lessened, right? Whereas people working on the business tend to buy coaching because they have the time capacity to be coached and to grow, right? So different mentality, different position in life, etc. This is really important, right? And then the other big thing with B2B sales is that you always have a decision maker, right? A person that's in charge of the checkbook in a business, right? And so, you can do all sorts of, I'm sure some of you guys out here, they've done deals with like businesses, etc. And then the deal doesn't go through. And it's because you made a deal with a person that doesn't write the checks, right? And so, like in the business, like if you do a deal with the person that writes the check, that's typically called a decision maker, right? And so, in B2B, there's always one person in the organization that decides, yes, no, whatever, right? And it could be like partners, it could be 3 people, it could be 5 people, whatever. But, you have decision makers that have to buy what you're selling, right? And so they are the real people you sell to, right? So for example, a lot of time with us, when we sell our high ticket programs, we have a lot of, men and women that come in, they're married, right? And so like our high ticket programs start at $5,000 to $10,000. And every time, we're selling to them, like I know the fact that if I'm talking just to the husband, that wife behind the scenes is also a decision maker. Or if I'm talking to the wife, that husband is also the decision maker. So you have to bring both of them in the sale in order to close the deal, right? And so one last thing with B2B is the concept of repair versus replace, right? And so
this is huge, by the way. People don't get this, and they think that you can just treat all of them the same.
Yeah. Yeah. So typically what ends up happening is, in a repair versus replace, it's like, in B2B, it's like there you get two type of people that want to repair their business, meaning like something is wrong in that business. Like, so typically it's like, you have a business. So we have a client, he's in a video agency business, right? Like $1 million a year video agency, and it's no longer, it's working well, right? And so he wants to repair it, right? And typically it's not the whole business that needs repair, it's just one component that needs repair that fixes the business, right? And so he wants to repair the agency, right? And then we have other people that come to us, they're like, I really hate my business, I don't like it, I want to replace it, right? And so when you're selling to B2B, you have to first figure out, like, people you're selling to, they want to repair or do they want replacement? So like if you're selling to a lot of dentists, they don't want to replace them. They don't want to go be, something else. They just want to have more money being dentists, right? Or chiropractors or whatever, Whereas a lot of people that are kind of like a digital entrepreneurs, not really like, not the people that wear uniforms, right? So like a lot of B2B, another subsegment of the B2B market is a uniform, right? And so like dentists, chiropractors, et cetera, they wear a uniform, right? Versus the ones that don't. And so typically with a suit and tie people and with a uniform-based crowd of B2B market, they want repair. They don't want replacement. Like a dentist doesn't want to go, 10 more years to a different school to be something else, or a chiropractor or whatever, right? They just want repair. And the reason they want repair is because they invested so much time, energy, and money into their business, right? So typically if you go to a business and somebody has invested like, 10 years of their lives, schooling, $250,000 to open a restaurant or whatever, et cetera, yada, 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 they don't want to replace that. That's a lot of things they got to give up, and that's a huge sunk cost. So they want to repair it, right? Whereas with a lot of the digital entrepreneurs where, they'll try, like, for example, running funnels, running webinars, running this, running that, to them, like, they haven't really invested that much money, time, or energy into it, or, their reputation, their ego, none of that's invested in there. And so what they want to do is they just want to replace it. They're like, I don't like this anymore. I want to do something else. I want to do something different, right? And so those are the huge distinctions for B2B.
And it's really easy to know to notice these differences. Like now that you're aware of it, I promise, like next time you guys talk to a prospect or something like that, if they're in the B2B space, try to pay attention to this and see if you can identify which one they fall into. And the reason we bring this up, and the reason why Alan spent some time talking about this, is no matter how hard you try, you will not sell replacement to somebody who wants to repair. You might be able to after like a year of trying to help them, and they don't get what they want, and they finally come to the conclusion themselves. Maybe, but when they first come to you, they've made up their mind. I'm here to buy replacement, or I'm here to buy repair, and you do not want to try to sell them the other thing that they, didn't come for. It's very hard.
Yeah. And the thing is, it's like the reason they want to repair it, not replace it, is because, they want to repair their ego. They want to repair their past. They want to repair all these things that were great. So it's like, it's not that the business, like typically people that want a replacement are people that don't like their business. They're just not happy with it, right? Repair people, they had a great business that was awesome, etc. Like our, video agency client guy, right? Like he, his whole thing was make $1 million a year, travel the world, stay in the best hotels, eat the best food, do nothing, right? While the money made money, right? So the business made money. And so it's like, he wants that back. He wants to hold on to it. He wants to repair that, right? But it's irreparable. It's not repairable because the market has moved on, and so he has to replace it, right? So huge thought. Next up is B2C, right, which is business to consumer. And so, I said before, like, you basically are solving one problem for the consumer, be it like losing weight, making more money, etc., right? Like learning how to play guitar, piano, whatever, right? And so demographics play a huge role, like where they live, how old they are, etc. And so, for example, like, demographically speaking, men and women buy different, right? They buy different, and so they're different and they respond to different things. So you got to be aware of that. Ages also, for example, younger people respond a lot better than older people. So years ago, I ran a survey to one of my lists, and it was like, why do you want to do XYZ, right? And like younger people, all of them, below, let's say 28, the common thing was like, I want to travel, I want to buy a Lamborghini, I want a private jet, and all that, right? And then above like 30 something, right? The crowd was like, I want retirement, I want
house for my kids.
Yeah, I want security, I want to pay my kids college, I want this, right? And then older folks were like, I want to give back, etc. So that changes a lot, like how you speak to them and what you sell them, because like if somebody, wants to retire and you're out there like on the screen flashing a Lamborghini, you're not going to resonate with those people, right? And so that's a big thing. And so the other thing is like also like like I have this thing where area of the city dictates customer base, which dictates quality of ingredients they'll find acceptable, right? So I live in Charlotte, North Carolina, right? And so this city is changing. It's like I think the second fastest growing city in America, right? And so like we have like 100 to 200 people moving here a day, but before different cities were different, and basically like ingredients in restaurants I noticed would be like different. So like if you go to one part of the city, they would use cheaper ingredients, and then you go to another city, they use more expensive ingredients, right? Because that was the standard set by the customer, right? So if you go to like an expensive part of the city, and you're like, hey, and you use cheap ingredients, the customer base will be like, no, this isn't good enough. Take it back in the kitchen. I'm not eating here, right? The business has failed. Whereas there's a tolerance level, and so like also like in the B2C market, there's a tolerance level for quality, right? And so like certain people, might dictate quality and different things. So for example, like older folks, like say 40 and up, right? Maybe 45 and up now. They grew up reading newspapers and stuff. So they like to read sales letters. They don't like watching videos or sales videos. They like to read content, they don't like to watch content. So younger people, they don't like to read at all. They like to watch, like, I never read a book. Fuck that. I don't care about a book. I just want to watch, right? So you gotta, factor in how they consume stuff, right? And the last thing we'll leave you with, what is a market is basically don't compete on commodities when selecting a market, right? And so what we mean by that is like don't compete on things that are
don't sell web design.
Anybody out there can do. And so like we have this thing, if what you're selling is on Fiverr for $5, then you probably shouldn't sell it, right? So like if for example, if you have a video agency doing animated videos and you can go on Fiverr and get an animated video, probably you shouldn't sell it, right? You shouldn't sell it, because what ends up happening is like you don't have price elasticity for your product at all. And then what'll happen is like you'll just run a bunch of ads to your product, and then the people seeing the ads, they'll just go, let me see if there's a cheaper version. I'll go over there, right? And so that's what I do now. For example, like I spend like a stupid amount of money online, right? And I have this habit where It's like if I see something like an ad on Instagram or Facebook, whatever, I'll just Google coupon, right? And it's like, boom, there's always a coupon for like 20, 30% off, it's like, it's there, right? And it's like a habit. And so, if you're selling commodities, you'll be running ads and just creating awareness, and you'll be selling a whole lot of fiber courses or services for other people that you make no money off of. So don't sell that. So if anybody, in somewhere can do it really cheaply, you don't want to be the one doing that. So let's move on to the next thing, which is the timing.
Yeah, just one more quick thing on this is like if you're looking at this and you're trying to decide where to go in, like which kind of segment to sell to, another thing to consider is in day one, the first question that we posed to you guys was, what is your goal? Like, what do you want this business to look like? With B2B, you're typically looking at higher ticket sales. It doesn't necessarily have to be. And with B2B, B2C, you're typically looking at lower ticket sales, but again, it doesn't have to be. The way that those businesses play out can be very different. One can be very much sort of, computer-based automations and selling, e-commerce products, and you never speak to the customers and so on. And then B2B can very much be more of a relationship-based business and that kind of stuff. So keep those things in mind, I guess, when you go into this, because whether you pick B2B or B2C, there's going to be opportunities in both. But depending on how we all usually have a vision of what we see, see the business what the business looks like in our sort of wildest dreams. And so take this into consideration when you're choosing.
I do want to say something interesting here that's really important, should be consideration. Like you guys should really reflect on your core values and build a business around your core values. So therefore you can sustain and be happy. I think that's one of the biggest lessons I learned over the last like 12 months as far as like picking a market. Because typically, like, people will just pick the market for, hey, because this thing can make a lot of money and it looks good, but it's not in their core values, right? And so,
well, let's get a little personal. How did you come up with that?
Yeah, so basically, like, me and Robert were working on this thing for like a year and a half, and so the automatic lines business was built on my core values. Basically, like, I have a super high, tolerance for pain, and so I can work for, I worked 3 years in a software company and made no money, and so it was crazy. So I can work on things for a very long time without like any return, right? Because to me, the payoff is actually creating the stuff, right? That's kind of my payoff. It's not the money. And so what I noticed was like, in automatic lines, when we're doing the calls and stuff like that, like Robert would want to do certain things one way, I would want to do certain things another way, etc. And then, and it took me like a year to figure this out. But basically what ends up happening is like, we have two different core values, right? So like Robert has kids, he has a wife, etc. And so time is a lot more precious to him because, it's like his kids are growing every day. He wants to spend a lot of time with them, and he values time and efficiency, right? Whereas I don't have kids, and I'm just like, a lot of my time goes into this. I call it, this is my craft, And so those two things were a tug of war, right? Basically opposing core values. And so what ended up happening is like, if I wanted to pull the business in this direction, like I wanted to do it, which basically means just like, I'm okay with working all the time. I'm okay with working weekends. I'm okay with this, right? Whereas like with Robert, it's like there's always a trade-off. Like if he works, he can't spend time with his kids. If he has to spend a lot of time with high-end clients, that means he can't spend time working on, in our business or with his kids or family or doing things he really enjoys, right? And so typically in a business, when you're in a coaching consulting model, you can either work with, you can work on your business or you can work on other people's business, right? And so knowing Robert for a long time now, he likes to work on his business more so than he likes working on other people's businesses, right?
100%.
Yeah.
I really struggle to get excited about other people's businesses.
Yeah, whereas I don't. Like, I get excited because I'm like, it's like solving puzzles for me, right? And so,
right.
And so what I realized like 2-3 weeks ago, I was like, I have to retool this business because what has to happen is like, it has to be reoriented to Robert's core values because of time and efficiency. Otherwise, there's a conflict, right? And so we did that, and like Robert's super happy, I'm happy. And like, we work way less and money's up and everything is great. Growth is good, etc. Right? And so like, you really have to figure out what your core values are. And there's a test out there by Jordan Peterson called Understand Myself or Understanding Myself. If you just Google it, Jordan Peterson Understand Myself test, it'll tell you, right? Like, etc. Like how if you're externally driven, internally driven. There's also a test called Wealth Dynamics, and you should take that test. And so like, I'm a creative, and so a lot of like my payoff is a lot of it is like, working on creating things, where Robert's payoff is like, efficiency, time, return on investment of time, etc.
Yeah, like building systems and that kind of stuff. Like that's what gets me off.
Yeah, so this morning we were talking about our recurring program, right? And it was like, do we do this, do we do that? And so it was like, well, if you do it like this, then, it's going to go against your core values and you'll have to spend a lot of time with these guys doing what you don't like to do. And in 6 months, you'll just build yourself a prison that's a job that you won't like doing, right? And so it's like, that's not going to work. So what do we got to do? We got to do it like this, and this, right? So there's compromise. So like for me, like, in 2000, 2008, whatever, right? I was making like about 400,000 a month, right? Like with this one website, right? And I was like 325 pounds. I was like fat as hell, and I was miserable. I was working like all the time. I was just exhausted, right? And basically, after I took the Well Dynamics test, what I realized was that I was working against my core values, and a lot of my stress, weight gain, unhappiness, misery, everything out of that business came from working against my core values. And then when I took the Well Dynamics test, I walked away from that business and never looked back, and a lot happier. And so same thing with automatic clients as far as core values go. I use that same thing to help me. I'm like, I want to help Robert here, want to enable him to be great, to basically do what he does. And let's see how it works. And it's working really well. So like when you're picking a market, again, one of the biggest mistakes people make when picking a market is like, there's money there, I got to go do it. They're not thinking about, am I going to be happy and nothing, whatever, right? And so a lot of guys I know in this market who just, who go this way, a lot of them will be like, man, I wish I just had a high paying job because this sucks. I'm working with the people that I don't like. I'm doing things I don't like. I'm working hours I don't like. I'm sacrificing things I don't like. It doesn't align with what I'm doing, and so it's like, that's really important because it's like, you can't like, so a lot of people will be like, well, this is, they're talking about sustainability of the market, right? Like in the sense of like, can this market be sustainable to, where we can make money in it for years? But the truth is, it's like, if your core values are not sustainable in that market, it doesn't matter how sustainable the market is because your core values are gonna just go to shit, and so like you can't sustain it, like, and you won't do it. And so it's like, you'll do it for like, a year or two and be done. And that's why, like, in a lot of these Facebook groups, etc., you see a lot of people, flip-flopping between markets and stuff like that. I was talking to a guy the other day, and like, he's like, he's launching all these things. And I told him, if you're launching more than 3 offers a year, you're not making money, right? Because that's the truth. And so it's like, one offer a year is plenty if you do it right. So yeah, that's really important. And so let's move on to timing. Otherwise, this call is going to be like 3 hours. We got a lot more to cover.
100%. So I'm really excited about this timing thing because I call it the secret hack to ultra profitable markets. And the backstory is, I actually stole this from a TED Talk. He didn't pitch it this way, but he brought it to my attention that there was a company called Z.com. They were very early. It was effectively YouTube, but there were 2 main issues which made it impossible or very, very hard for them to succeed. And those issues were that there were codec issues, right? So people didn't have Flash and so on, so they couldn't play their videos. And also, this was before broadband was sort of widely used around the world. And so there was this low bandwidth problem where, we've all, I think, played videos that were just stuck buffering all the time, right? And that's just not a good user experience. So they were actually before YouTube, but they were too soon. The timing was off. And then they had, they were going to do original content. They had like Hollywood talent signed on and whatnot, but it just ended up not working out. They were too early. Then YouTube's timing was so much better. Broadband was increasing around the world, especially in the US, and the codec issue was solved with Flash. And so YouTube came along, then Google, ate them, and they're crushing it, right? And so this thing about timing is like, and by the way, I want to tell you as we dig into this, don't think that this is about predicting the future, because I think that's what people sort of default to. That's not what we're talking about at all. And as I'm going to show you in a second, and actually I have a business idea that I'll share with you guys. I shared it with Alan last week. He's like, dude, this is amazing. You should tell everybody, because we're not going to do it because we don't have the time, but I will tell you guys. So this is not about predicting the future, but if you time what you're doing, there's a lot of things, there's a lot of things that go into a sale, but if you have the right timing, all those things kind of just go away and people just want to buy. So timing can be really, really used to your advantage. And one point that Alan brought up when we were putting this together was also the opposite of that. Can be a very difficult thing, where if you're trying to fight the hype, if you're trying to sell something that is now available widely on Fiverr and nobody really wants to buy it anymore, then you're really fighting an uphill battle that you are not going to win. So as far as timing goes, I just pulled up some things here. We don't need to read too much into them other than me proving the point. So I pulled this from Ahrefs, where if you look at April 2020, you can see the term mask skyrocketed. Shocking, right? COVID came and all of a sudden everybody was Googling masks because they were buying masks. Of course, this would have been hard to predict, but even if we just go back to that time of March 2020 and we say, hey, look at what's happening around the world right now. Everybody's starting to buy masks. I should probably figure out how to sell masks. You would be making a killing. The biggest problem would probably be finding an ad network to to sell it on. But you see the point, right? So what we see here, and search traffic is just one sort of thing to look at, but it is a good indication of trends and whatnot. And so what's interesting here is there's like this, there seems to be this like big spike, and then after that there was 4x more traffic than pre-spike. Now COVID is a kind of a unique example because it's still not gone, right? But I have another one. So Bitcoin, same thing here. You look there in December 2017, there was this massive spike, 16 million searches in 1 month. And then after that, there's a 4 times higher search volume than before. So if you time your thing, if you time the thing that if you're sitting there with a blank sheet of paper and you're just trying to figure out what to sell, hands to God, like if I were to just start over today with nothing, the first place that I would start is Google Trends. And I would be on there every day, and I would be looking around like what's going on in the world right now that's very much hyped, that isn't necessarily going to go away tomorrow, that I might be able to do something with. Because I've had this with chatbots specifically. I've had this experience. We'll see if Alan has an example too, but I saw the whole chatbots thing. I can't remember when, but let's say 2018 or something like that. Again, I can't remember. I have terrible memory, but I think it was around then, and it was brand new. And all I saw was like, hey, the open rates are amazing. People are clicking. I'm like, holy crap, this is coming in here, and it's not going to replace email, but it is a great addition to email. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to go, I'm going to learn everything I can about this. I'm going to start building some bots and blah, blah, blah. And I did that. I spent the weekend. I really kind of familiarized myself with it. And then I think I posted on my Facebook or something like that. And sure enough, I got my first client. Then I got another client. And I got a third client. And then I actually sold a course on it too. And actually, come to think of it, I never should have abandoned that, because that would have made a lot of money if I stuck with it. These things where trends come and where the timing is right, it's like, man, it's just, I don't know exactly what it is. Maybe Alan has a better grasp on it, but it is so much easier to sell something when it's hyped, when it's active right now, and when it's on the up and up. It is such a different experience than selling something that's just kind of stagnant or selling something that's on a decline. So Alan, I don't know. First of all, have you had an offer that's kind of gotten, the benefits of nailing the timing?
Yeah, my weight loss offer. I was getting customers on Google for like $9, right? But the thing is about timing is like, there's different things. Like, so a lot of people were selling weight loss offers like in supplement stores, and I just sold it online. So timing of going online was good,
Right.
But the reason timing works so well is because you have the ecosystem basically selling for you, right? The news, etc. So if you go to news. If you look at trends in Google, what you want to do is you want to go to news.google.com and type in that trend and see all the news stories. And that's how you really know what to sell and what to say to that market. And the reason being is the news, the media will carry the hype for you. And this happens a lot in fashion, right? Like fashion trends, etc. And that's why like a lot of fashion companies, their entire existence is based on, detecting trends and writing trends. And, the entire stock investment industry is based on detecting trends, etc. So, yeah, everything, and so like basically the ecosystem is selling it for you. And then the other thing is like, you don't have too many people doing it, because, if too many people are doing it, everybody's aware of the sales process, and everybody's aware of the sales process, there's massive sales resistance. And with their sales resistance, things get hard across the board. Like, it costs more, you make less, and so with the right timing, it's like, everybody's selling it for you. You don't have any sales resistance, and everybody's else convincing people that this is it. So you just got to hit the jet stream and do it. I have friends that we call them like surfers, and basically they just surf these trends. They make a lot. So like when COVID hit, they were selling vitamin D supplements for immunity boosting, with all the scientific studies backing them, and they made millions of dollars. And then they just wait. And I have one friend in Thailand, Greg, and all he does is like, this is his life. He basically waits. And he'll come in like every 1 or 2 years, see a trend, spot it, make like $2 to $10 million, and then pull back and hang out, ride bikes, travel, do whatever, see another trend,
Smart.
make 2 to 10, etc. Yeah, and his like a huge villa. He built like a huge villa up in Chiang Mai in Thailand. It's like sick. And yeah, and there's a lot of guys like that. The only thing with that is like you don't really have a sustainable business model. And I think his like brother-in-law is the developer that works with him. So like, the brother-in-law has like a job, and then like whenever he sees a trend, he gets a brother-in-law to come in. They bang out a project together. They make a ton of money and they leave. But yeah, timing is really important. The problem with timing is like you have to go look for it. You can't just wait, And so it's like you have to. It's a strategy, right? And so
Yep.
like, if you do focus on timing and doing these things, then your strategy elsewhere, it's going to suffer, because it's like you can't control these things, like you can't create
Right.
timing, you can just be part of it. Yeah.
Yeah, and so just to give you guys some examples, right now as we're recording this, NFTs or non-fungible tokens, which is effectively these, a way to buy art online, and you can show that this is the unique painting or picture or whatever, because I think they upload it into the blockchain. It's a little bit above my head, but it's all the rage right now. Like everybody's talking about it. And so if you had an offer on that, you would crush it, because there's also FOMO. There's also people that have fear of missing out. They're like, oh, this thing is so hot right now. And especially if it's a money-making thing, which this seems to be, because one NFT just sold for $69 million the other day. So that thing would crush right now just because of the timing. Everybody's talking about it. It's in the media, and Gary Vee won't shut up about it. And it's like there's all this hype around it. And so that's one thing. And by the way, if you were to do that, sell shovels, right? If during the gold rush, you got to get lucky to find gold. But if you sell shovels to people that are looking for gold, you have a much better chance of being able to pull it off. So don't go create NFT art, or what? Yeah, NFT, that was what it's called. Don't go create the art. Create the tools that people use to create and sell the art. Anyway, that's one example. The other one that I told Alan the other day, just an idea that came to me, was, if I bet you this would work, right? So you would wake up every morning, especially if you're like me and you live in Europe and you're 6 hours ahead of the East Coast USA. You wake up, you go to Google Trends, you see what's happening right now in the world. You maybe wait for 1 or 2 or 3 good ideas, and then you create t-shirts that evoke some kind of emotion or some kind of opportunity to express yourself around those topics. And then you just sell them, you upload them to Printful or some, print on demand company like that. And then you just launch some Facebook ads and off you go. So again, some recent examples. I haven't watched it, but there was an interview with Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, and there's this feud, right, between the royal family and the couple. And so I just had this idea, right? Like, what if you just went out, you made some funny t-shirts, and one said like Team Meghan and one said Team Queen or something like that. Guarantee you that would sell. And it would do really well for like a short amount of time, and then it would kind of plummet. So like Alan was saying, if you're doing this, understand that this is sort of a conscious decision, that this is your business model, that you're out there looking for trends, and you capitalize on them when they happen. Otherwise, they can definitely be a distraction if you're running a regular type of business, and then all of a sudden you're trying to, dip your hand in all these new things that keep coming at you. So we don't have to spend more time on this, but definitely consider timing. Am I too late to the party? Are things stagnant, or are they on the up and up? It can play a huge difference as you go out there and choose your market. Okay, this one I think we can kind of race through, but you need a market to sell to, and you need something to sell. And what you sell to that market has to be able to be sustained and sold at scale. I don't think anybody's here to build a business that's going to make 10 grand or 20 grand. We want to be able to sell something that can scale. And this was another thing that came into consideration when me and Alan were talking about kind of going in two different directions, is that I love building systems and sell stuff that you can, you create it once and you can just sell it over and over and over again. And Alan loves to kind of work with people and solve their problems and stuff. And one is, both of them are good, right? But one of them, you have to involve your human manpower, and the other one, you can kind of just sell stuff. You create a digital product and then resell it, and they both have pros and cons. But something to consider, especially if you try to apply the AC model. But one thing, Alan, you brought up as we put this together was this idea of market share versus wallet share. Can you speak on that a bit and how this plays into this?
Yeah. Yeah, so big corporations, they focus on market share, right? Basically, like how much, if it's like, say, Samsung and Google and Apple, whatever, like, how much market share do we have, right? And typically market share is focused on commodity items, right? Like how much market share do we have, because people have to have those, like cars, how much market share, etc. But wallet share is what we focus on. Basically, wallet share is like looking at your customer base and saying, okay, on average, my customers, have an income of $50,000 a year, right? So how do I engineer my marketing, etc., so I can get like $1,000 a year out of that wallet share, in exchange of value to them, right? And so if you have, 1,000 of them, right, and they all may on average make 50,000, and then you get $1,000 a year out of them, then you got $1,000,000 a year. Now you don't have to get $1,000 up front. You get $83 a month, which is $1,000 a year, right? $20 a week, etc. So you can slice it many different ways, but you got to focus on wallet share because, like, your customers should be viewed as a renewable financial resource, right? And as long as, like, you offer value to them, they offer value to you. Remember, you offer what's useful to them, they offer what's useful to you. So they offer you money, you offer what's useful to them, etc. Back and forth. And so that's really important.
Yep. And honestly, I think we can kind of move on to the next slide here. So this is something that Alan notices as well about the ecosystems, and oftentimes this means social media platforms and how price elasticity matters here. So can you talk about this, and then we'll quickly show the market selection matrix, which we're going to give to you guys, and then we'll move on to disruptive idea or superpower. I can't remember.
Yeah. So, like, different ecosystems where you operate your business have a different kind of like we have this thing we teach in Accelerate, it's called standard industry model. I think I don't know if we're going to touch upon, maybe we'll touch upon this, but basically it's like the model of the standard industry model, how things are done, right? And like, so how you buy cars is a standard industry model, how you get cell phone service, and this varies from country to country, right, etc. But basically, like, if you're out there marketing your services and stuff in a Facebook group, you're doing organic, like, you basically are going to have a lot of sub $3,000 buyers, so people are going to buy for like 3K, right? If you're running, like, say, for example, a certain ad with, like, a certain marketing, you'll get, like, sub $10,000 buyers. And then if you're running things differently, you're going to have sub $36,000 buyers, right? And so, like, different ecosystems affect the price elasticity. And so what you got to focus is on learning what has been more normalized for this price range, right? Because if you're, like, in your group and you're trying to sell like a $6,500 high-end program, and that group's standardized pricing is 3K, well, it's like you're not going to sell it, and you'll be like, well, this doesn't work, right? But what you don't know is that, hey, they would gladly buy that all day long at 3K, instead of 6,500. And so that's one thing I noticed, right? And then in some cases, if you go to 36K buyers, right, people that are willing to, in that ecosystem, like high-end masterminds or whatever, you want to sell a $36,000 program. If you go out there and you want to sell a $3,000 program, they won't buy it because to them there's no value there, obviously, because they're at a different level, and so you should definitely pay attention to that.
Yep. So now we have this market selection matrix I'm going to show you guys. So we're going to give it to you, and then you'll be able to, find your market, hopefully. So we're going to give this to you guys, and this is like version 1.0. We're going to continue to enhance it, but it's quite good as is. And the way that it works is there's different variables, right? So the things that we consider here when choosing your market is the market size. We talked about this. You want something that has competitors, that has legs, that you could be running for a long time, especially if you're doing what we say, where we encourage you to build something that scales, right? Which means that you're running ads and you're acquiring customers automatically, and it's happening behind the scenes with you not really doing anything, and it can happen 1,000 times over in a single day, and your workload doesn't change. So if it's scalable, you don't want to run into a market that scales or that you can run ads to for a week, and then you've tapped out the market. You've shown your ad to every single person, and everybody who's interested have bought it. You don't want that. So you want a market with legs. Then we have personal interest in the market. This is the belief that if you have somewhat of an interest in something and you're building a business in that industry or that market, you're more likely to stick through it. Because if you were to spend time researching or working in that industry or whatever, creating things in that industry anyway, then when things get tough, you're going to be able to see it through. But if it's just this throwaway thing where you hate the customers, you don't really care about it, you have no personal interest in it, as soon as like the first obstacle presents itself, you're most likely just going to go try to do something else. So we have competition level here, and we have availability of affiliate products. A lot of things. One of the beauties about our model is that you get a lot of customers. Like, you get a lot of customers, which means that there's a lot of opportunities to sell people other things. And so affiliate products can come in handy. This one's kind of a binary deal breaker, reachable through advertising. We do not really love businesses where you can't advertise at scale, because that means you're going to have to find some other way of acquiring customers. And if there is a way to acquire customers automatically, the way that we teach you, the way that I just spoke on, then that's absolutely the way that we should be doing it. So if you're running an offer to some indigenous culture where they don't have internet, they've never seen a computer, it's going to be hard to reach them, right? You're not going to be able to get their attention and show them an offer, and they might not even have money to pay you. So that's not a good idea. And then we have high ticket potential, recurring potential, and we talked about timing too. It's not necessarily a deal breaker, but can help or not help you. And then these are the weights assigned to each one. And then what you want to do is you want to start off with yourself and kind of have a think about what are some markets that I could potentially be interested in. And we have that sheet for you guys, the niches sheet. It's in the membership area with thousands of them. You can go in there to get your brain going to try to figure out what are some industries that I could potentially see myself working in or having an offer in or running a business in. And then what you want to do is just put down 5 of them here and then go through and just kind of do a little bit of research. So market size, okay, if I'm going into the dog training space, then I would just simply Google how many people are selling to them. Or if I'm in the cat food space, I would try to find how many people or how many companies are selling cat food. And then there's a little bit of a guide here, by the way. If you hover over here, you can see the different market sizes. And then you just put in the numbers. So 10 equals mass market, 1 equals tiny. So then you just put in the numbers and personal interest. So if you have none, then you put 1. If you have very high, then you put 10. Competition level. So again, a lot of this comes down to just kind of Googling around and also using things like, similar web. Similar web, you can go, let's say you find cat food. Chewy.com. Okay, so let's check out Chewy.com. So you would put in Chewy.com, and this is going to give you an indication of what's happening here. Look at this. They got 43 million.
Not to be fair, I'm going to interject here. Like Chewy.com sells all sorts of pet food, not just cat food. So if you're doing cat food, you got to be careful. So like you should go to Amazon.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, Amazon, look at the reviews and everything.
Yeah, but effectively that's the idea. But Alan's right. You want to find the specifics of it, but clearly these guys are crushing it. But so if you're doing, personal finance or whatever, like go to Amazon, look for how many books are there. Are people reading books? Are they writing books? Like we had a client who was going into the auto industry to basically help people like auto sales guys do better. And we went on a call with him and he was like, he couldn't get any traction. We went on Amazon. I was like, man, it's just not a lot here. It's like not a lot of people are selling to this market. And we're like, there's probably a reason for that, right? So what are some other ways, Alan, to look for competition other than just kind of looking at,
go to ClickBank, see how many products are selling. Go into
the marketplace on ClickBank.
Yes, searching for Shopify stores.
It depends on what the thing is that you're selling, right? Whether it's a book or it's like a Udemy courses, like whatever it is that you're selling, you want to go find how many other people are selling something similar, to the same market.
Yeah. Then you can go to Amazon, look at how many reviews and everything. I mean, like just explore.
Yeah. So a lot of this is just kind of Googling around. Same with affiliate products. Once you have identified, 5, 10, 15, 20 different people or competitors, then typically if you want to look for if they have an affiliate program, you just scroll down to the bottom. And there's usually going to be like an affiliate link. So see that? Affiliates? These guys have affiliates. So then you can look into what they're selling and whatnot. And then you could put that into the sheet. And reachable through advertising. So this just comes down to, is this market available like on social media? And can I reach them? Like, can I target them somehow? And if they're not, then you probably want to scrap that offer right out the gate. But this calculator or the selection matrix will kind of tell you that. High ticket potential. What would you say? What is the definition of high ticket? 3K plus, 5K plus?
I'd say 1K plus.
1K plus. All right. So you want to be looking at
3K plus.
Yeah. If you're going into the cat food market, it might be difficult to find $3,000+ things to sell them, and so that would kind of score lower. But if you're going into personal development, then absolutely there's high ticket potential. And so recurring though, for example, this would be a 10 for cat food. I mean, cats need to eat not just once, not just twice, but every day. And today, tomorrow, and 30 days later, 2 months later, they're going to need to eat. So great recurring potential. And then timing. So if you take the cat food example again, like that's not really going to be something that's going to be impacted by timing unless there's some ingredient or something that was in the news and it's dangerous or super healthy or whatever the case may be. Like I remember in Sweden, when I was in like middle school or something, it came out that there was some ingredient in the chips, like potato chips, that was causing cancer, and like potato chip sales just completely came to a halt for like a year, and then it just kind of things just went back to normal again. I can't remember what the thing was, but from a perspective like that, timing can also play an important role. So not necessarily the product itself is timing, but maybe some ingredient or something ancillary or around it that's in the news or hyped up or getting a bad rap, whatever the case may be. So yeah, you go ahead, you put in your numbers, and it's going to tell you. So if I put like 1 here, you see how it's going to just show you the number 1. And then also we're about to go over the disruptive idea and the superpower. But once I finalize this, you'll be able to just put this in here and it's going to be able to help you. Like it'll just tell you like, hey, go do this market. Here's your disruptive idea and here's your superpower. Cool. So we don't have to spend.
So the only thing I want to add to this is this is not designed as an absolute.
Absolutely.
This is designed to more so to help you think, right? To help you decide. It's like a deciding tool. It's not like a tool that says this market is good, go do it. It's like this is like here's all the things you should consider, and then based on that, use your best judgment, or go in the group and ask, be like, hey guys, I'm thinking about this. Here's the thing. What do you think? And then we can help you there. That's big.
100%. And this goes not just for this spreadsheet, but any type of, trying to make anything that's a little bit creative into a mechanical process. You can use tools and whatnot, but like Alan said, you want to use your best judgment at the end of it. So kind of use this to guide you. And then once you have an idea of what might be the answer, have a think about it. Like, okay, does this actually make sense? Let's do a reality check on this. Is this something I want to do? Does it make sense? Do I think it's going to make money? And then you can kind of move on from there. So very, very, very important to do a final check like that. All right. Well, let's see here. Let's see if we can continue. Day 6. Too many things open. Day 5, day 3. Where's day 2? Here. All right. So that was the market. Luckily, the superpower and the disruptive idea are going to go a little bit faster. What is a superpower? So Alan, talk to us about this idea of, a capability versus ability.
Yeah. So let me open my notes 1 second, guys. We go there.
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. Yeah. It's a lot of stuff to digest, so I have to refer to notes as well. All right, so basically superpower is like the ability to help somebody, right? Like Superman can save the world because he has superpowers. Batman can save the world because he has superpowers, right? So what's your superpower, right? And how can you offer value to these people? Because remember, when we were talking about how to pick a market, you have to offer something that's very useful to these people. So like what's your ability to offer something that's very useful, better than anybody else, right? And so the difference between capability and ability is basically, your capability is, basically means that, you can get them results, but without you doing it, right? So you can hire other people, you can hire experts, etc. But ability means like, your ability to help people get results, right? And so that's a big distinction, right? So it's like the superpower you have can either be an ability or it can be a capability, right? Ability is like for you to go out there and get somebody a result, because the biggest problem we run into with teaching people this concept is like, well, I'm not good at anything. I don't know, I don't know what I'm good at, right? Well, so for example, like let's say you want to go into like a fishing market, you want to teach people how to fish better, right? Well, I don't know much about fishing. I know how to sell a market online, so I can go find somebody that's really into fishing, and that's my capability, right? Basically to put together those resources and offer value like that, and so that's the big thing. So basically, your superpower is basically how you can help them with their biological and psychological needs and wants from earlier on, and and also superpower is your internal ability or / capability, right? Not external like reputation. It's not something that people are like, hey, this or that, but typically it stems from like people generally coming to you for advice on that topic, right? So like for example, if you're good at, I don't know, let's say you're good at planting flowers, right? And like your friends will be like, hey, what's a tip for that, right? And you'll be like, okay, this. It's something that you naturally just help people with, or naturally are good at, right? Like people kind of use you as a reference, like your social group uses you as a reference, or like you'll catch yourself going to various Facebook groups or whatever, and like you're kind of offering advice and tips. That's kind of like the seed of your superpower, you know?
Yeah, and like Alan said, the big important thing to understand there, because obviously a superpower is kind of self-explanatory, but the one big thing to realize is this capability versus ability. So you don't necessarily have to be the guru, so to speak. You don't necessarily have to be the one with the face on the business and teaching the things that you know, or coach on the things that you know, or whatever the case may be. Like you can take a step above that and be the person who organizes everything around it. You can find the guru, you can set up the funnel, you can organize all the marketing, and you could have a business where you're actually publishing other people. And we have clients who do this, and they do really, really well. Like we have one client who's in, I think, 2 different markets, and he's probably looking into a third. And it's like, it's a really good idea, because a lot of people kind of default to, what can I teach people? And if that's what you want to do, by all means do it. But realize that you could actually go one level higher than that and apply this model without you actually being the person who's doing it. And just a one little quick example, I love this one that Alan, you've talked about on our calls before. Is this, what's his name? David Geffen?
Yeah.
Yeah, so give us that one, because it's just super, it's a good analogy that explains this thing.
Yeah,
concept.
so I was watching this interview with Steven Tyler, right? That's the guy from Aerosmith, and like he was so happy about buying his, Hawaiian house. He bought a house in Hawaii for like I think $2 to $3 million, whatever. You can look it up. And the interviewer was like, well, how come you didn't, get it before? And because he got the house from the money he made from that show, Celebrity something, where they like rate singers, whatever. And
Right.
he said, well,
America's
yeah,
Got
but
Talent
it's like,
or something.
when you have a group of 5 people, you have, a manager that's, you got to split that, tour, whatever, 6 different ways. You have all these expenses, and then the government gets half. It's like, you don't have much left over. Whereas there's a guy, David Geffen, like, he basically owned the record label, Geffen Records. And, he had all these guys under his record label. And now, he's worth like $7-8 billion. And, he has like a $500 million yacht. He's not sweating a, $1 to $2 million house in Hawaii. So Geffen has no ability, but he has the capability. Whereas David Geffen's ability is actually to congregate the capability of others and then basically leverage them,
Yeah. So that's a big idea. How do you discover the superpower? Well, what can you help them with? What are you innately good at? What do you enjoy doing? And I'm saying you, as in you or the person that you're thinking about publishing. And one big thing here is this is something that you guys need to understand. When you're asking yourself these questions, you're starting with you as the center point, right? But you want to be really careful about that. And this comes back to what I was saying in the beginning. It's like, it's about the market. It's not really about you. So don't start off with yourself and then develop everything around that. Like you can do that, but you always have to do a reality check with the market. Is this actually what the market is receptive to? Sell them what they want, give them what they need. I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard that, and it's just something you cannot ignore. So by all means, figure out your superpower, or the person that you're publishing superpower. What are they good at? What do they like doing? And what do other people come to them for advice around, and so on. And then once you have that superpower figured out, so for us, it's client acquisition. We can help people get customers like all day long and then turn them into clients, right? So you want to be very clear on what that is. And then you want to make sure that that's something that the market wants. It has to be sexy. Like they have to want it. Like I learned this lesson the hard way many years ago when I thought that I just saw people selling online courses, and I'm like, oh, they make money, so I need to make an online course. And I didn't realize that like it goes deeper than that. You can't just sell an online course. It has to be an online course that people are actually interested in. So what I'm good at is systems and automation and stuff. So I did a course on that, and lo and behold, nobody wanted to buy it. What a shocker. It's not very sexy. People want to learn how to make more money in their business, not how to like automate, and save themselves 2 hours here and there. That comes later. Most people just want to know how to grow the business, and then they'll worry about all that stuff later on. So be very careful when you do this. But again, superpower, it's kind of self-explanatory. So we can move on to this disruptive idea, and then we'll wrap this party up. So the disruptive idea, Alan, attention is scarce and at a premium. And one thing that you've said is you're competing with, not just your competitors in the market, but you're competing with a lot more than that. So maybe talk to us about that a bit.
Yeah. So most people think out there, like, when they're building an online business, that, you're competing with other business owners, like, running the same thing as you are. You're not. That's not it. Like, you're competing with like everybody else. So, you're competing people posting on Instagram. You're competing with people posting in Facebook groups. You're competing with people creating free YouTube channels. You're competing with people on Fiverr. You're competing with people from everywhere, right? So, basically, many years ago there was a barrier to entry, right? In the sense of creating a product, you have to be good at technology, HTML, CSS, and everything, and you know how to sell, create a product. And so not many people did it, right? And but now with, like, anybody can grab an iPhone or a cheap Android or whatever, and just put it on a table, hit record, and they can create a product. And they can create a YouTube channel, they can create an Instagram, they can take pictures, they can create Instagram accounts, etc. And so attention, it's like you can't really sell without getting somebody's attention, right? It's like the prerequisite of a sale. What do you mean prerequisite of a sale? Prerequisite of people giving you money is you have to get their attention to pay attention. And and so if you get somebody's attention, then you can take that into a sale. But if you don't get their attention, then you can't have a sale. And the problem of getting attention is that everybody's competing with you for attention. And like everybody's competing, like, trillion-dollar companies are competing with you for attention, like Facebook, Google, YouTube, everybody, and there's a lot of noise in the market, right? And so, what you have to do is you have to have a disruptive idea to cut through that noise. Meaning, like, if, for example, with our book, Automatic Clients, like if you see that, on the Facebook feed or Instagram or whatever, it's like automatic clients. Okay, that's a disruptive idea. Automatic clients, right? And so we'll talk more about this. But
Because usually people think, oh, I have to work a lot to acquire a client, right? So if it's automatic, it's kind of the opposite.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so, like, it's a disruptive idea. A lot of people are there running offers without a disruptive idea, or like really stupid ideas that they think they're like catchy, cute and stuff, but just not good. Like they're not disruptive, right? And so, like, a disruptive idea has to disrupt their attention, but also offer value to them in some way, right? So, for example, we'll talk about it in a second that, but it's like, it has to disrupt their pattern of thinking and bullseye hit the value. Like, here's what you need, here's why you need it, and they should understand the whole concept just looking at it without you having to sell them. So, like, the whole thing should sell itself in like one sentence. Like, I should be able to give you money for that one thing just based on this sentence, right? It doesn't have to be $1 million. It can be like $1, but I should be able to give you like a $1 at least for that something. Because then if you have that, you can build upon it, right? And so, the reason the markets exist is because the problems aren't solved, right? And so if the problems are permanently solved, the market ceases to exist, right? And so the solution is typically inefficient. And what it does is the disruptive idea opens up hope for a more efficient solution or a better solution. Because, obviously, if everything else, if something in the market works so well, then, like, there wouldn't be reason to buy other things, right? So, for example, like, I'm an iPhone user. I use iPhones, and every 2 years I'll go try Androids, and I come back to iPhone, right? And so, like, I'm kind of like, Apple has solved my problem. And so, like, I don't really like Android marketing and stuff. Doesn't register. Like, I'll see a Samsung phone or something, I'm just like, whatever, I don't care. It doesn't register. It's not disruptive to me. It doesn't matter. But if something better than iPhone came up where it caught my attention, I'll be like, okay, I'll consider that.
Yeah. And the good thing is the product doesn't have to be disruptive. It's just the marketing, because it's going to, like Alan said, kind of cut through that noise. And this is one of those hacks that it's a similar, like timing. It's one of those hacks that just kind of helps you, cut through the noise in this case. So with the timing, it's like it helps you with the sale. So this helps with the prerequisite. If you have an idea that's sort of counterintuitive and the opposite of what everybody else is saying, it's going to capture people's attention. They're going to pay attention, and they're going to be like, what is this about? And ideally, it's going to offer, like Alan said, hope. It's going to be, they have this problem. They've had it for a long time. They tried a lot of things. And then here you come along saying the complete opposite, and they go, holy crap. Finally, something that's going to be able to work for me. And it does so much for your conversions because you've given them hope, which is one of the biggest things that you can give people, especially if you're trying to sell them with this, I would say actually anything, but I was going to say selling them business advice, helping them fix their business, but it goes for anything really. If you're able to be the one who's kind of standing out and doing things differently and giving them hope that all the things they didn't try, it's okay, because there is actually a complete opposite. And I've observed this myself. When I've watched somebody explain a concept to me, I go, wow, this is completely different from what I've seen out there. And I guess this is why all the things that I've tried before didn't work. Is because I was doing it wrong. I wasn't doing it this way. But this way is completely different, and I like it, and I want to go try it. So
yeah, one thing about a disruptive idea that's really important is that it should be self-explanatory. Like, if you have to explain it to somebody, it's not good, right? Because like you don't have the luxury of explaining things to them.
Right.
You get somebody's attention for like 1 second, and that's it. If you have to sit there and like if you have to, if you tell like 10 people and you're like, this here it is, and like you have to explain it to them, then it's like it's not disruptive enough. Like you lost, right? It can be the most disruptive idea, better, etc. But if you have to explain it, it's not good. It should be self-sustained in its explanation, right? And the other cool thing is it doesn't have to be unique. It just has to be better, right? Because like better is different than good. If it's unique, that'd be great. But if better, it can be better, right? And so I'm just reading off our notes. Basically, disruptive idea gets you attention. In essence, it's really a marketing angle, right? But it goes a little deeper than that, because a marketing angle is just kind of like, it doesn't have a soul. Like a disruptive idea is like something that really changes people's lives. And so the way you come up with a disruptive idea is typically you have to define a standard industry model, right? And so every industry operates on a certain model. For example, we'll use Robert's agency, so like Robert, in the digital agency space, it's like, you have this thing, you put a proposal, they review the proposal, you get the proposal back, you do a little back and forth, maybe a little negotiation, somebody gets more money, somebody gets less money, etc. And what ends up happening is like, that's how it's done, right? And then like, so typically like once you identify a standard industry model, you have to figure out how to go against the standard industry model, right? So an example would be like, when the keto came, it's like eat fat to lose fat. It's like, holy shit, that's different, right? It's like, because before that was like, count your calories, eat low fat and all that. And just like eat fat to lose fat, and it worked really well, right? And then basically the philosophy of this is like you sell them what they want, but then you really give them what they need, because ultimately it's about value and like helping people out, right? So here's a few examples of books. So the top two are ours, Automatic Clients, that's the disruptive idea, automatic clients, right? And then 2-hour agency. So everybody was working, 20, 30, 40, 50 hours in their agency. And then there was 2-hour agency, right? That's a big one. Robert.
Yeah, and so with the agency side of things, the biggest problem that people who ran agencies had was that they were manually acquiring clients, which, like Alan said, it requires, some kind of outreach, cold email, cold call, then you'd have a meeting and you'd have a phone call and you'd figure out their needs, and then you'd send them a proposal and you'd be rejected, and then you have to follow up. And I realized that instead of going for high ticket, if I was just going for like a low to medium ticket sale, kind of productize the different services that we offered and put them on a website, I was able to make the sale straight through the website instead of going through that process. So when I told people that, and then when I told them about the other side of it, which is, delegating some of the workload and building systems, I honestly worked like 30 minutes a month on my agency. So great disruptive idea to our agency. And then automatic clients, like we said, it's instead of kind of similar thread, right? Instead of doing it manually, a lot of people, again, sell people what they want, give them what they need. So automatic is a very big thing. Never split the difference is a great example, because this is about negotiation. And this is kind of a default thing that people do, right? You say 100, I say, or you say 200, I say 100, let's meet in the middle, let's say 150, right? Everybody does this. So Chris Voss, ex-hostage negotiator, he couldn't operate like that because he was a hostage negotiator. He couldn't say, kill 2 of the hostages and give me the other 4 or whatever. He couldn't do that because he was dealing with human beings. Great example of a disruptive idea. So he just takes one thing that's out of this process of talk to them and figure out what they want, figure out what you want, try to meet. And like he figured out the process of negotiation. Then he find one piece of it that he said, oh, I can do something completely different here. I can say never split the difference, and then I can go into why that is. And the book itself, Never Split the Difference, is like 0.5% of the book, right? So in many ways, it is a marketing angle. It helps you get attention, and it gives people hope that, oh, maybe I can do this and maybe I can be successful in this. And that was a good one. 4-Hour Work Week, kind of self-explanatory. It was, a new concept at the time. Profit First is a great example because it's telling people what they want, and it's a disruptive idea, right? Who doesn't want profit first, right? Everybody who's run a business, who doesn't love the idea that they might get permission from this guy to take profit out of their business before they pay their expenses? Really, really great name for a book. Millionaire Next Door, again, supposed to be like this person next door who's just like you, but little did you know, they're actually a millionaire. Here's how they did it. Fantastic way to capture attention and then go about explaining what you do. And then servant leadership, leadership historically is kind of been like, somebody telling people what to do. And then servant leadership is the complete opposite of that. It's about serving the people that you work for instead of telling them what to do. So just put these here to kind of get your guys' brains going. We do find that a lot of people struggle with coming up with this. You shouldn't. It's not a difficult concept, and you can actually make it fine just without having this. But we definitely recommend trying to spend some time on this. And once you know what it is you're selling and what your market wants, if you can figure this out, then it's a really good idea. So we do have just a few things to cover about how to actually do it. So like Alan said, you map out the standard industry model. So I'm just going to use the 2-hour agency model again, or the 2-hour agency concept, to explain to you how you actually go about figuring this out. So you take the model and then you figure out what is it that people are doing, and you break it down into a process. So like I said, in the agency world, people would do a cold call, then they would set up a meeting, then they would send a proposal, then they would usually get rejected, but sometimes they would actually close a deal. Then they would spend months together working in a one-on-one setting, and then they get their profits at the end of, subtracting all the costs from whatever they got paid. So if I look at that process, right, then I could think about, okay, what am I doing here that's actually different from what everybody else is doing? So in my case, almost all of it was different, which was kind of a great scenario. But if you look at the negotiation scenario, he just took this one idea of, here's how most people negotiate, and then they reach this point of, he's asking for 200, I want to pay 100, people go 150, and I think that's a bad idea. So he uses that one little tiny thing, and he turns that into a fantastic marketing angle. So you don't have to have, like we said, the solution itself doesn't have to be this big disruptive thing that's completely going to change the way people are doing things. But it's like, if you can find just one thing in the process that you do that's very different, and I'll give you another example that I just came up with. So we had a guy in our accelerator, his name is Jeff. He runs a very successful Facebook group, and he was telling us about what he does as we were helping him put his book together. And he was saying, what I tell my students is most people actually prefer to work with a beginner than an expert that's been around for a long time. I'm like, pause. Tell me more about that. Why do people want to work with an amateur or a beginner than somebody who's been around for a long time who's an expert? He's like, well, everybody knows that an expert's going to be expensive, but a beginner is going to be a lot more probably invested in doing a good job, and they're not going to be able to charge the same amounts of money. So he's like, I tell my people to do that and lean into the fact that you're a beginner, and they all go out there and they crush it. I'm like, whoa, that's a fantastic disruptive idea. It takes something that's a fear of the customer, an intimidation, and turns it into an opportunity. And that's a great disruptive idea. Then you just got to figure out a name for that, but that's the concept, right? And then one thing, this is the last slide really. So when you do this, you typically don't want to make things more complex. So your disruptive idea has to be better typically, right? You want to remove elements instead of adding elements. So Alan gave the examples when we put this together of, removing the gas from the car. So that's Tesla. Or when the iPhone came out, if you guys remember the presentation, he said, we're releasing 3 new devices today or something. He was like, the music player, the phone, and whatever the third thing was. And he's like, but we're actually just releasing one. So they put, the 3 devices into one. So it was kind of removing things rather than adding things. 2-hour agency was about removing calls and meetings and proposals and all these things that people kind of hate doing. And then once you have the concept figured out, you just put it into an easily digestible concept like 2-hour agency, for example.
Yeah. So the big lesson is like, you don't want to reinvent the standard industry model. You want to alter it so it's easier and better, right? Because the problem is like, if you reinvent a standard industry model, then you have to go explain it and educate everybody, and teach everybody. And that's a headache, right? Because then you got to they got to give up everything they do and already know. They just want something to be altered, right? And so one of the reasons that also works really well is like, especially in the repair market from the beginning, is because when they see that alteration, that it's like, this thing can repair the problem I have. So like in our case, people have a hard time getting clients, right? Especially paying for them because so many people trying to do it. Well, it's like, here's how you do it. We alter it. Now we repair the high client getting business, and a lot of people are attracted to it. And so it's a win-win, And so, is this it for this?
Yep.
Okay, yeah. So we have a lot of extra notes here, but that's for the next call, which we'll do. We aim to do this for an hour, but it's like it seems impossible to do this thing in 1 hour, because like we have so much to share with you guys. After all, our book is like 340 pages or 360 pages. It's big, right? So before Robert does that, before we do the recap, I want to ask you a huge favor. If you would go in our group, in the Automatic Clients group, and just tell us your biggest takeaway. I'm going to shoot a link in here. And this
Yes.
is
Go
kind of
to the
like,
group and put like day two, my biggest takeaway from day
yeah,
two
yeah,
of the
just say,
7 day fast start.
yeah, just say my biggest takeaway from a 7 day, 7 day fast start is so and so, right?
And I'm going
There's
to
the,
help you brush up on your memory here by running through it real quick.
yeah, there's the link, guys. Go ahead. And the reason I'm asking you this is because, we want to see where the value is for you guys. And so that way we can kind of focus on doing more of this for you in time to come.
Absolutely. So we talked about markets. We spent a lot of time on that. Superpower, disruptive idea. So what is a market? We talked about the problem and the solution. There's always those two parts. We talked about psychological needs and biological, what do you say? Psychological, no, biological needs and psychological wants, right? Is that the way we put it?
Biological needs and psychological ones.
Right. We talked about cure versus prevention. We showed you this little thing of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs and the different types of markets in there. Kind of an explanation of the differences between B2B and B2C, suit and tie market versus t-shirt and hoodie, working on the business, in the business, repairing your business versus replacing the business, and selling to the decision maker. B2C, demographics play a big role. Areas of the cities dictate the quality of the ingredients they find acceptable and don't sell commodities. We talked about timing and how that can be a huge hack to your business. Just be careful. If that's a game you want to play, you probably want to go all in on that. Market share versus wallet share. We talked about how the ecosystem affects price elasticity. Try to sell the same thing on LinkedIn as you will on Instagram. It's not necessarily going to work. LinkedIn is a different audience, right? You got the market selection matrix. We're giving you the link to that so you can go play around and see if you can find your market. Superpower, kind of self-explanatory, like we said. What's the thing that you can help people with? And the big idea here is it doesn't necessarily have to be you. It can be somebody else as well. Disruptive idea, it's effectively a marketing angle. You pull something out of the standard industry model that you're doing differently, and then you turn that into the concept. And that really pierces the attention or pierces through the noise out there. It gives you the attention that you need to go out there and sell some stuff. And then how do you discover it? You break down that standard industry model and you look at the component pieces and see, is there something here that I'm doing that's different than what everybody else is doing? And then you can use that. And that's a summary. The action steps is to go in the spreadsheet. If you haven't already figured out your market, go ahead and play around there, do the research and build up a bit of a list and try to figure out your market and then get some clarity on your superpower. And if you can, figure out a disruptive idea, because as you put that into whether you're doing a book or a course or whatever, we're kind of agnostic about the thing. We're just about selling something low dollar on the front end. But whatever it is that you're selling, if you can have that disruptive idea, it's really going to help you sell stuff. So it's really good if you can figure that out. And with that, we're going to look forward to reading the day 2 takeaways in the Facebook group. And if you guys do have any questions, we will stay and answer those. If you do so, please let us know in the chat here in Slack. Sorry, in Zoom.
Yeah. So one thing I do want to say while you guys are shooting the questions here is basically that picking the market is like a huge it's one of the most important things you can do in your business, right? Because it's like that'll determine the rest of the business. It's like the foundation. So a lot of energy and a lot of thought and effort should be spent in picking the market. And if you guys pick certain markets that you guys think are good, post them in a group and we can help you clarify it, So we did have one question come in privately. It says that does automatic clients have an affiliate program? So we don't know because like I've been doing this for a very long time and I've had affiliate programs, and the problem with having an affiliate program in this business is that affiliates will do anything to make a quick commission at deterrent of our success, right? And so what'll end up happening is you'll have affiliates, doing SEO, like, is this a scam? Is this fake? Is this whatever, right? And then what ends up happening is that you get really bad Google optics from having an affiliate program. So basically you're incentivizing a whole affiliate base to create issues, right? That are not there. And so we most likely will not have an affiliate program because for that reason. And the other reason is that we find that like most affiliates don't really drive a lot of traffic either these days. And so there really is no much benefit to having an affiliate program. So I think like, short term we can get an extra few sales, but really don't need to. We're all about just buying traffic and getting sales, and we do very well with that. So probably no to the affiliate program.
Yeah, we actually built the tech for it, but I agree with Alan. It's like it can really, the business can take on a life of its own that you don't necessarily want, and you have to be very careful with that. So,
I have a friend, right? He has an affiliate program, and like he sells like high ticket stuff, and like it was like he pays, I think like he pays pretty fast, and like he was telling me how like somebody somewhere like that he was like buying the program, like somebody bought his program 30 times, and then charged back 30 times, and like made all this money, and like basically destroyed his merchant account and stuff like that. And so, and then like also like on Google it's all about like YouTube reviews and these reviews, and it's like, is this a scam, is this that, right? It's just like really bad things that shouldn't even be there. It's just like a lot of a lot of just it's not worth it. And for the amount of sales it generates, it's just like, yeah, let's not mess with this. It's really like the payoff is just minimal.
yep, makes sense. Well, I think that's it. So great call today, everybody. Hope you enjoyed. We're going to look forward to the day 2 takeaways in the Facebook group, and we'll see you guys in day 3.